Hello, my name is Justin. In this video, I'll show you how to use the new Unity GUI options in Universal Fighting Engine 1.6. First, let's have a look at the new GUI options in the Global Options panel. As before, you have the gauge or meter toggle here. Now you also have the default fade duration for screen transitions and a toggle to use canvas scaler, which I recommend to always have on. In fact, let's quickly turn it off to see what happens. As you can see, the font is too large and the UI overflows off the screen. This is because the UI was built for a 1080p sized resolution and the current game window is much smaller than that. The default canvas scaler settings are generally best and most versatile, but feel free to experiment to see what suits your game best. For instance, if you know the target device resolution, then you can set the scale mode to constant pixel size and design your UI around that. Otherwise, in order to allow for multiple resolutions, I recommend sticking with the scale with screen mode. Opening the screens toggle gives you access to all the GUI screens for your game. Here, there's a nice open button that allows for easy editing of your GUI prefabs. Let's have a look at how it works. When I click the open button, UFE will create a canvas element and add the prefab as a child of the canvas. I can then click close and it will remove the canvas along with anything inside it. This means, to save any changes to your prefab, you will need to hit apply on the inspector. It's a good idea to go through each of the prefabs and see how each one is set up. You'll have a better understanding of what's required in each screen. Also, notice the script used on each prefab. As with previous UFE versions, these GUI scripts are all available for you to modify to suit your game. Now, I'll take you through creating two types of filled bars, since that will be a common component in many fighting games. I've created some basic bar images to use for this example, which you could easily do in any image editor with a gradient fill tool. Notice that I've created a different one for each side. I recommend doing this as opposed to flipping the same image for the other side. Although you'll save on a texture, the cost is negligible and you'll find alignments and anchors easy to handle when using separate images. For our UI, let's duplicate the default Battle GUI and use that. Rename it to Suit, replace the Battle GUI in the Game GUI options panel with ours. Then open our custom UI. Here, we could just replace the sprite in the life bar images, but instead we'll create them from scratch so you can learn about anchoring and alignments in Unity's UI. Delete the life bars for both players. Notice this warning. Unity will warn you whenever you change a prefab enough that it loses its connection. After we click continue, we can hit apply in the inspector to reconnect the prefab. Now create a new image to replace the one we just removed. Drag the player 1 bar graphic you created into the source image field. Thanks to the scale with screen size scale mode, we are able to adjust our UI and it will keep its alignment and relative scale. I'll use the rect tool to adjust my image in the scene view. This gives me nice snapping options to align with other UI elements. Since I've created this image as a child of the life bar border image, I could also just set the anchor presets to stretch. If I were to move my life bar outside of the life bar border image, two things happen. The life bar is drawn before the life bar border, and my anchors are now different, so adjusting the screen will lose my relative position. When creating your own UI, you should keep things organized, but also understand that the order you have items will affect the draw order. Now, set the image type to filled, and ensure the origin is right. Finally, we just need to assign it to the Battle GUI script in the root of the prefab. For the second player bar, do the same, but your filled origin is left. Apply the changes to save and test it in your game. That works fine, but we can make this a little more interesting. Open the custom Battle GUI again and select both life bars. Unity allows us to edit multiple objects simultaneously if they are the same type, so we'll do a batch color change and adjust the size a little. Another quick test. And it looks much better now. Unity UI offers different fill types too, so don't restrict yourself to simple horizontal filled bars. Life bars will generally be this type for most traditional fighting games, but gauges and other things could be anything. So I'll show you a simple radial bar setup. Again, I've just created these images using simple gradients, this time with a radial pattern. To save some time, I'll just replace the current gauge bars. First, I do the borders. Using the input fields, I set the size to something I like, then anchor and reposition. Then I do the filled areas and zero out any values that were brought over. Change the fill method to radial 360, fill origin to top, and I want my player 1 gauge to be counterclockwise. Do the same for player 2's gauge, but this one will be clockwise. Select both fills and we'll give it a bluish colour. Then select both borders and darken them to suit. Don't forget to hit apply, then give it a test run. The last thing I'll demonstrate is working with text elements. In previous versions of UFE, because we relied on GUI textures for dynamic text objects, there was a complex workaround to create the fonts. But now, thanks to Unity's new UI, we can just use normal fonts without this workaround. Fonts are mostly self-explanatory. Just make sure you use the correct alignment for the side of the screen you're on. Worth mentioning though, is the wrap and overflow settings. Wrap is like a regular word wrap setting. Truncate, however, cuts the font off when it gets too large. If you want your font size to be variable and possibly larger than its frame, then select overflow for both horizontal and vertical. If you want your font to always stay inside a specific frame, you'll want to use the best fit option combined with a vertical truncate. Just make sure the minimum and maximum sizes are adequate. Finally, we have included a very handy gradient effect component. Although it was intended for text elements, it actually works with images too. And that's all for this video. I recommend you also check out Unity's UI tutorials to understand more about their new UI system. Thanks for watching.